Hello and a warm welcome to the AI with Arun show. In this episode, we are joined by the legendary Jeetu Patel, who is the president and the chief product officer at Cisco. He is a visionary who is reshaping how global enterprises tap into the power of AI, security, and connected platforms. Under Jeetu's leadership, Cisco is pioneering the next generation of technology, integrating innovation at a scale that few companies can match. We'll explore how he is driving transformational change, unifying product portfolios, and what it takes to lead in the rapidly evolving world of AI driven solutions. Sujit, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Arun, and I appreciate the warm introduction.
All right, so let's get started. So, Jitu, Cisco's product strategy has evolved over the last few years, especially with AI and cloud technologies. So, talk to our viewers about what the product strategy has been and what are some of the key drivers behind this transformation.
You know, if you think about one of the big assumptions that we made, and I have actually learned in the course of the past 30 years in business, is that every once in a while, typically once a decade, you have a major seismic shift of a platform that occurs. Now, by the way, that cycle time of it used to be a decade, that's actually getting much, much smaller now and much more compressed. Now you're seeing that happen every few years. But this AI shift that we're seeing occur right now is one like we've never seen in our lifetimes. And it's so profound and it's so consequential that the first thing you have to do is you can't fight the megatrend. You have to make sure that you use it as a tailwind. And you have to understand the structural shifts that are going to happen in the market. And based on those structural shifts, what is the value that you can add to those structural shifts that are occurring in the market? It so happens in this case for us, it turns out that the things that we've been working on for the past 40 years happen to be very relevant in this one transition. And so let me just start by talking about like what's happening in AI, because I think it's important to actually anchor this on what's happening in AI and then work backwards from there. What's happening in AI right now is we are squarely in the second major phase of AI. The first phase was when we had these intelligent chatbots 2.5 years ago that, you could answer questions and it would give you answers that seemed almost magical. And, there was a lot of hype around that. And then for a while, people were skeptical of it. But in general, this seemed like magic. And even now, every time that you use ChatGPT and it gives you a good answer, there's a little bit of a dopamine rush, like, wow, this is amazing, right? We're now squarely in the second phase of AI. The second phase of AI says you've got agents that are going to conduct tasks and jobs almost fully autonomously, right? And as you have these tasks and jobs getting conducted fully autonomously on behalf of humans, there's going to be a bunch of assumptions that we have had so far that are going to be completely altered. The first thing that you have to think about is what are the constraints of AI? What is going to slow this thing down, this movement down? Because the reality is, if you had augmentation of these agents to your workforce, our 8 billion humans will feel like we have the throughput capacity of 80 billion people. But what's going to hold it back? And what's going to hold it back is that you've got constraints on infrastructure and you've got a trust deficit. Those are the two big things that are going to hold it back. Okay. When you talk about constraint on infrastructure, what is the constraint on infrastructure? Well, the first thing is you're constrained with power. You physically don't have enough power to fuel the data centers of the world right now. Why is it that you don't have enough power? Because compute, which is the second constraint, GPUs specifically, are very power hungry. And so you have to make sure that you're feeding that with enough power, and there's not enough power in the world to feed and satiate all the demand of AI. And so what's happening right now is these data centers are going to be built wherever there's availability of power all throughout the world. So first constraint is power, second constraint is compute, the third constraint is network bandwidth. If you have 1,000 employees, but now you're going to have 100,000 agents, and those agents pretend to be humans and are using a computer just like a human would use a computer, that is 100x more capacity that's going to be needed, right? And so that 100x more capacity is going to be a massive constraint because like we just don't have enough capacity all throughout the world. So what does that mean? That means that every data center architecture will have to be reimagined. Every data center will have to get re-racked. The power that gets pulled into those racks will have to be of a different level of density. The network bandwidth and the switching infrastructure that's needed is going to be very different. And so that's the first big change, is the infrastructure constraint needs to get overcome. If you do that, then the reason the ChatGPT is 900 million daily active users today and not 1.8 billion or not 2.7 billion is not because there's not that much demand. It's because they literally don't have enough compute capacity and enough infrastructure to go out and fulfill that demand. The second big thing is this trust deficit, where people don't trust these systems sometimes. They're like, you know what, if I don't trust it, I'm not going to use it. Is it going to take my personal data? Is it going to do me harm? Is it going to be monitoring over me? All of these kind of concerns come up. Is it going to give me an answer that I need to not have? If I'm a company, is it going to actually hallucinate and give me the wrong kind of answer to my customers? That's going to be bad. All of those things start to happen. So we need to make sure that we have offset that trust deficit and created a trust surplus, because if you don't have the right level of safety and security, people won't use these systems. And so those are the two big things that I think are going to be constraints. And these are two things, coincidentally, that happen to be in the sweet spot of what Cisco does. We happen to be the largest networking company in the world that is building the most energy efficient networks that are full stack integrated into the compute stack that we can give to the market. And second, we happen to be one of the largest security companies in the world. And securing AI is one of our key priorities. So it so happens that those two things have to be thought about deeply. And so when you ask the question, what does this mean? This means that the mission that Cisco will have is to make sure that infrastructure does not become scarce and there is not a trust deficit for these systems. If we can get those two things done, then we will make sure that we deliver for the world the ability to reach its full potential with AI.
Jeetu, that's a very powerful answer, and you have laid down what I've been reading about and what you have been talking about. More importantly, right, about where the future of Cisco is headed, and that's a very powerful articulation. So thank you for doing that for our viewers. So Jeetu, talk to our viewers about some of the challenges that you are facing as you are making this own transition, as your own transformation journey. Right, what are some of the challenges that you are facing, and more importantly, what are some of your customers telling you about the challenges and how are you mitigating those?
So the challenges that every company is facing today, like we did a survey with like some of the top CEOs in the world of companies, and we said, so what do you think about the promise of AI? And 97% of them said, hey, we think that this is going to be fundamentally transformational to our business. The second thing that you ask them then is, say, okay, great, this is fundamentally transformational. How ready are you? And they're like, well, only 1.7% of them felt ready and prepared. So even though 97% of them thought this was going to be great, only 1.7% of them felt prepared. So then you ask them a question, why is it? What are the things that are not making you prepared? And it's basically three things that they said. They said, look, the complexity and the affordability of the infrastructure is hard. We're worried about safety and security, and we're worried about making sure that we have to bridge the skills gap. There's a huge skills gap. I don't have the right level of skills in my organization to go out and prosecute the opportunity for AI effectively. And so if we can make sure that we get everyone dexterous enough to a certain point, then we're going to be in good shape. And that's the challenge that every company is having. Now, the challenge that I think when you look behind the challenge that every company has is that of speed. This market is moving extremely fast. If you wait for even a little bit, you actually get left behind. So I think there's only going to be two kinds of companies in the world: companies that are very, very dexterous with the use of AI, and companies that are going to be really struggling for relevance. And you want to be in the first category, not the second. And that means you're going to have to move really fast. And that means that you have to move with an ecosystem of partners that can help you in moving really fast. And if you say, what is my challenge and what is the industry's challenge? It's basically speed is everything, and if you slow down, you get left behind. And then the other thing you have to keep in mind is, while you're moving fast, you also have to move very strategically and smart, because if you don't bring your core value to the table, it doesn't help.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of time we have seen people asking the question that is my job going to be taken over by AI? But you're spot on, Jeetu, that companies and people who do not go with the flow with AI will be the ones who will be left behind. So you choose what category you want to be in.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an active choice. Like some people say, I'm just going to sit in the sidelines and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens. And I feel like that's exactly the wrong answer, because you won't develop the instinct as a company. You won't develop the judgment to know what needs to happen. So I think it's extremely important that that's actually done in an effective way.
Yeah. So Jeetu, that's a great segue into the next question, which is about how are you using AI for your internal operations? Product development, DevOps, different kinds of teams coming together as part of your team. How are they using and collaborating with AI?
So every function within Cisco will get reimagined in the next few years. And I don't just mean the obvious ones. The obvious ones, Cisco is a product company. Engineering will get reimagined. Will coding be, how much of the coding will be done by humans versus how much will be done by machines? Maybe you'll see a lot of code that'll be written by machines. But I think there's more than that. So let me give you like function by function views. If you're in sales, how you prepare for a sales meeting before you go into a sales meeting will be reimagined. How you review a contract will be reimagined. How you actually conduct training and onboard an employee will be reimagined. How you build content for a keynote will be reimagined. Everything will be reimagined. But that's just the first phase. The second phase, which is what we're in right now, says, how will these workflows get completely automated, where you don't just ask a question and get an answer? You literally give a job to someone, and then that agent will do that job autonomously for a period of time. If you wanted to do research, we are actually seeing that as a live use case today. I can go to deep research and I can say, go find me these things. And it takes 20 minutes. It comes back to you. It gives you a wonderful document. You can read the document. You actually get smart on something. The time compression to intelligence is shortening, right? But imagine now that instead of that agent working autonomously for 20 minutes, it can work autonomously for 2 hours, and then for 2 days, and then for 2 weeks, and then for 2 months, and then for 2 quarters. Imagine the kind of work that it can start doing that we had never even imagined. So right now, what we are seeing this as is largely a productivity boost. What I think people will see this as in the future is a complete reimagination of the kind of problems that we can solve. And that's where I think AI is hugely underhyped right now. What I mean by underhyped is, the amount of original insights that AI will be able to generate that didn't exist in the human corpus of knowledge, that will now exist, will allow us to solve problems that we had never dreamt of solving before. And the infrastructure is going to be sophisticated to be able to direct compute dynamically to those problems that are highly complex. Because today, up until recently, when you ask your chatbot a question like, hey, write me a poem versus cure lung cancer, both of those activities, give me a pizza recipe versus curing lung cancer, both of those questions got exactly the same amount of compute, which is bonkers. One of them is a much easier problem than the other, right? In the future, this kind of long form thinking will dynamically be allocated the appropriate amount of compute based on the complexity of the problem. And you will be able to dynamically allocate clusters of compute power to a certain problem for a given amount of time. And that then opens up a whole new set of opportunities, because it's kind of like, think about if 1,000 brains worked on one problem for a given amount of time, how much progress could you make on that problem if they were just focused on working on the one problem? It's the same with computers. If you give it focus, then it actually does well. If you don't give it focus, then it does a mediocre job. And so what we are now entering into is this era of focusing agents to be able to do more on behalf of us, and give it the resource and the luxury of time to be able to do that. And when that happens, something magical will start to happen.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a great analogy. Because many of the realm that we are looking at, and as I talk to many, especially established companies, there's a lot of talk about AI productivity. But what many companies are not thinking about, or talking about, or doing much about, is how AI will help them solve unsolvable problems. Exactly the point you made, and also unlock new business models for them, which they're not even thinking about. And I think you're right. I mean, that is where the true value of AI lies.
That's right.
Productivity is just the phase zero or phase one, whatever you want to call it.
I think productivity is like, I think it'll be looked at as something which over time we'll look back and say, oh my goodness, boy, did we lack imagination back then.
Yeah.
When we just say, okay, I can do something that I'm already doing just slightly better and faster. It's like, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, I think there was a demo that was done where there were two people in separate rooms and they were able to keep the device next to them and talk to each other. And one of the people that they were showing the demo to said, I'm very perplexed. Why wouldn't I just go walk over to the other room and talk to them? And it's because, because they didn't fully imagine the potential of this, which is no, you could be on the other side of the world. And this could be the way that you would communicate with someone. I think the same thing happens with AI, whereas it's like, okay, I'm just going to be able to do this thing a little bit more efficiently. It's like, yes, but you might be able to do things that you were never able to do before because we couldn't even imagine doing those because those were so hard that it didn't even cross our minds that this was something that was solvable as a problem.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Jeetu, let's take a segue to the next round. And you are such a seasoned leader, and a lot of people follow you and learn from you. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, some of the M&As, the acquisition that you have done. Cisco has had a history of very successful acquisitions, and you in particular. So talk to our viewers about, some of the learnings that you have had, personally have had, and as part of your teams and your leadership, as part of M&A. How should a company be thinking about M&As, especially in the world of AI?
About M&As in the world of AI. I think like the way that I see this is, firstly, I think whenever I don't think the M&A culture has changed that much with AI. I feel like it's like anything else where you bring in a new set of people, they come with their own values, own set of culture. And what that has to do is it has to be injected in your organization. So your organization incorporates that culture, and your organization also has to instill some of the organization's culture into that new company. And sometimes those things work well, and sometimes those things don't work well, And so from an M&A perspective, I don't think that changes that much with AI or not with AI. What does change is the way in which we actually build products changes quite a bit. Like it used to be that you would have product management, engineering, and some sort of design kind of functions that built a product. Now you'll have AI research as a key component. It used to be that you had a very deterministic flow on what you build, whereas now neural networks operate where you don't always know why they do what they do. Up until now, we've never had that problem with a machine. Like if you've written a piece of code, it's basically a giant if then else tree, right? If this happens, then do this. With AI, it's not that. It's like sometimes you don't know why you've done something. There's this kind of study around mechanistic interpretability, which interprets why a neural network works the way that it should. But we don't have clarity on that right now. Like when you type in a question, ChatGPT gives you a certain answer. We don't always know why it gave you that answer. We just know that it gave you that answer. And so that kind of nuance has to get sorted out over time. But I don't think like M&A changes fundamentally. The way I think about M&A as a strategy, by the way, Arun, is I don't think about M&A as a strategy. I think about you have to have a very clear true north. Once you have the true north, at that point in time, you have to then make sure that, as you're building towards that vision of the true north, if a company comes in and says, I can help accelerate that vision for you, then great. You should not be shy to deploy your balance sheet. But you should not actually be thinking about, oh, I'm going to go buy this company as a strategy, because like it's a very hard thing to go out and know whether or not acquisitions are going to work or not, and whether or not a transaction will even happen. Like there's 1,000 variables that might change because the transaction doesn't happen. So if you make that the central part of your strategy, it actually is almost guaranteed to have a very high beta, very high risk.
Thank you, Jitu. That's a very nice way of putting of how leaders and executives should be thinking about M&As in the first place. Having the true North Star. All right. So let's talk about the second segment of our show. You do a little bit. This is the crystal ball segment. So while you have spoken about the way you see the market maturing for Cisco, but in your vision, how do you see Cisco as a company in the next 5 to 10 years? Of course, there's a lot of things happening in AI. Every day things are changing. But what's your vision?
So I see like in the next 5 to 10 years, the way that you're saying, how does Cisco change in the next 5 to 10 years, right?
That's right. That's right.
I think we become like, if you think about who we are today, we are the critical infrastructure company for the AI era. And that means we're providing critical infrastructure for critical infrastructure, because AI is going to become critical infrastructure, and we're providing critical infrastructure for AI. And the way that I think Cisco evolves and changes is we just have to be building the most reliable, the most resilient, the most manageable, the most secure, the most performant, the most energy efficient infrastructure that can allow organizations to use AI to the fullest degree possible and reach its full potential. I had someone who I was interviewing with today who said to me, Cisco is not a sexy company. And I'm like, you're right. We don't think of ourselves as a sexy company. We think of ourselves as a trusted company that makes other companies really sexy when they use our stuff.
Wow.
That's the way to think about it.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Jitu. Yes, you're not sexy, but I can't imagine a company operating in AI or any space for that matter, right? Without your.
I mean, if you don't, could a company be sexy if they're not actually doing something really cool with AI today? No. And in order for a company to do something really cool with AI, they need infrastructure companies like Cisco. And we are the largest in the categories that we play in. And I think size does matter over here because it does create data advantages.
Yeah, yeah. So you could broadening that question a little bit, and thank you for talking about the vision for Cisco. So broadening that a little bit in terms of networking and security, those segments by itself. What are some of the trends that you see in those segments?
On the networking side?
Yeah, on the networking side and on the security side as well.
So on the networking side, I think firstly you have to think about this as your architecture shifts are going to happen across the board, right? And so you will see some major architecture shifts that occur. What are the architecture shifts that are going to happen on the network? You're going to see, the scale proportion is going to be completely different. These clusters of GPUs that need to communicate with each other in low latency, super high performance. I mean, these are like, milliseconds will really, really matter much more than what they've ever mattered before. So like from a training infrastructure side, I think the performance is going to be a really, really big deal. Latency is going to be a really big deal. And energy efficiency is going to be a really big deal. And data centers will be highly distributed throughout the world, and they will need to interconnect with each other. And so how they interconnect in low latency will be a really big deal as well. The other big architectural shift you're going to see on the inferencing side is, I think inferencing demand right now is very spiky, Arun. You ask a question, you get an answer, there's a spike, right? As agents continue to conduct tasks and jobs autonomously, and they're continuously working, agents don't take vacations. Right? They're going to work all day long, all night long, round the clock. As they continue to keep working, the inference demand is going to be pretty steady. And so right now, the big thing that we have to solve for is, in order to create abundance in the world, you have to overcome scarcity of infrastructure. Because AI will create a state of abundance where you will actually have abundant intelligence. And intelligence will be available to everyone at very rapid speed. But in order to have that abundance, you have to overcome the scarcity of the infra available to have the abundance. And that's the problem that Cisco will have to solve, along with a bunch of other partners of ours like NVIDIA and AMD and and the like. But like I feel like that's the area of true innovation that will be needed.
Very well articulated, Jitu. Jitu, so we talked about the largest.
On security, maybe. On security, security is going to get hyper distributed. You will need to have security in cyber defense so that you can actually address the attacks at machine scale rather than human scale. So you'll have to build AI native products that are built from the ground up with AI. But you'll also need to have security for securing AI itself, whether it be the models, whether it be the agents. And I think that's going to be super important. Um, and so I think those two pieces in my mind are central to success.
That's great, and security. Yeah, you're so spot on the security, and there are so many startups that we see in the security space. So how are you empowering developers and startups? You spoke a little bit about the larger partnership ecosystem, like NVIDIA, for example, right? But what about startups and developers who want to co-innovate with you or just create new products on your platform? How are you empowering them?
So I think developers in the ecosystem are going to be like, one of the things that people keep saying is, oh, are all engineering jobs going to be lost? I think that's completely I reject that notion. I feel like there's room for human ingenuity um, that is super critical, you know, and that room for human ingenuity is like you cannot ignore that as you're going through this. So what AI will do is it'll remove the burden of syntax from the developer so that the developer can actually step up and do more than what they were doing before. And as you have developers do more than what they were doing before, the throughput capacity per developer might be 10 to 50x more than what it was. And imagine if the world were not constrained on talent to build software. Like, imagine what would happen. I think we're about to enter into that era. But I think you'll have some fits and starts. I think people will hype it up initially. And when they hype it up, they're like, oh my goodness, all of us are just going to be sitting on the beach and we'll have nothing to do. And then the next thing is, none of this is working at all. It's completely useless. It's just hype. And I think you'll see a lot of ups and downs of that nature. But the reality is that you'll see incremental progress, which is actually at a pretty steep curve, but it'll feel incremental. And Sam Altman had a really good statement he made recently, which is when AGI happens, it'll almost be invisible, where you won't even feel that it's there. It just happened, and it's just part of our livelihood. Like, it's like when I tell people, like, if you go to Waymo and sit in a Waymo for the first time, my goodness, it feels like magic. It's like, what just happened? This car is driving itself. I'm sitting in the car, and it's just driving itself. This is bonkers. The second time you stop getting that fascinated. You start doing a little bit of email. The third time you're starting to complain about the seats and this is something that's not working, and we've gotten completely used to it. Imagine how we've gotten used to any song that has ever been available in humanity can now be played within a matter of 2 seconds by just searching on Spotify, right? This was not like when I was growing up, like you had to earn to go out and say, oh, I'm going to save money and then I'm going to buy a CD and I'm going to be able to listen to that CD and I'm going to keep listening to the song. Like that's no longer the case. And so I feel like we have a remarkable capacity to adjust and make anything the norm, but the norm is growing at an exponential curve. We just don't realize the exponentiality of that curve because we're adjusting to the world at that exponential curve as well. And so I personally feel like when you look at like how things are progressing, artificial general intelligence, which is defined by some as AI is going to be as smart as any human, and then artificial super intelligence or ASI, where AI is smarter than any human, can do PhD level work in any field, all at once. By the time these things happen, they will just feel very normal. And we will just incorporate them, and then we will add value where we can add value, and not the others.
Yeah, that's right, Jitu. I mean, there is coexistence that honestly exists between humans and agents, and that will evolve. Humans will naturally find their path as the whole
Yep.
system evolves.
Yep, I agree. And in my mind, I think the human creativity can never be underestimated. You still need human judgment. Here's think about a 2-year-old. Okay, like if you think of a 2-year-old and imagine how much data about the physicality of the world it actually captures in a given amount of time. Do you have kids?
I do have two girls, yes, much
Okay.
older, 18 and 15.
Okay, so when they were younger,
Yeah.
wasn't it amazing to see how quickly they just would grow every year? It's like, oh my goodness, when 1 to 2 was a massive change and 2 to 3 was a massive change. And it just kept happening. And then they started speaking, and then they start, walking and speaking and talking and arguing and having opinions. And then all of a sudden, like now they're 18 and 15 and they've got the mind of their own. And now all of a sudden, like, they're smarter than you. And before you know it, like you're looking to them for help. That is a tremendous amount of context window that's training them by what they're absorbing. And humans have this amazing ability. The context window on AI is still pretty limited, like it requires a long time to actually train a model to operate as well as a human over a composite 80-year period on how much they've learned. And so I do feel like people underestimate the amount of learning that we do and how much evolution we have as humans. And that's not something that's trivial to just replicate in machines overnight. Like I am a believer in the human ingenuity and creativity, but I'm also a believer in the fact that the things that we spend most of our time doing today will largely be irrelevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And we will actually have found other things that actually make us more relevant for the times. Yeah. Just like 50 years ago or 100 years ago, the things that people did, like a lot of the jobs that exist today, like the job that you're doing right now of conducting a podcast did not exist.
Right.
100 years ago. And so like these things change over time.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, and there are many things that some of the things that we can imagine, and many of those things will be that we can't even imagine in today's world.
But exactly.
Come up.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeetu, with that, we come to the last segment of our show, which is the rapid fire round.
Okay. I'll try to be more.
Yeah. So that's the fun round. Yes. So here's my first question to you. What is the one technological innovation that excites you the most right now?
I think that's obvious. I think AI is. But are you saying within AI?
Yeah, within AI. Yeah.
Oh, within AI. I think the agentic side is going to be very interesting, and then the physical robotic side will be very interesting. Those would be the two I would think about.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, robotics, some of the things that we see are incredible.
Yeah.
All right. The next one I have for you, in one word, how would you describe the future of AI in enterprise networking?
The future of AI and enterprise networking is you will have, imagine if your desire for capacity increased by 100x or 1000x, and if you had tens of billions of agents more in the world, everything that is demanded of networking today will scale proportionately. And so you need more energy efficiency because every kilowatt of power you save over here is a kilowatt of power that can be fed to the GPU. You're going to need higher performance. You're going to need lower latency. You're going to need better throughput. You're going to need better security. That all has to be baked in. You have to have, those things cannot be, they have to be easier to manage. They have to be, better integrated with the ecosystem. I think all of those things are just going to be the norm.
Yeah, different scale is what we're looking at.
Different scale, different level of openness, different level of simplicity, different level of energy efficiency. So all of those things, lower latency, different interconnects that are going to be required. I think you're just going to be working in a hyper distributed, very large scale world. Large gigawatts of data center capacity distributed all throughout the world that have to be coherent.
Yeah. All right. My third one to you is, what is the biggest misconception about Cisco's approach to AI?
Oh, that Cisco is, I would say that it's clearing up right now that Cisco is a legacy company that doesn't have anything to do with AI. It's like we are central to the AI movement, and we're central to the movement of baking security into the fabric of the network. Like those are two things that we do in a very central way. So I think the people that don't understand that right now are one of two kinds. Either they're competitors of ours, which means that they would say, okay, I'm going to benefit by going out and just poo-pooing them. Or people we have not done a good job of getting to the world and telling them what we're doing and sharing with them the kind of customers and the kind of transformation the customers are experiencing from the infrastructure we're building.
And that indeed is a headline, Jeetu, because Cisco, I believe, is in the thick of, you're very central to anything that's happening in the world of AI.
Yeah, and I always tell my employees in the company, don't ever pay attention to the stock price. Because if you're high today, that that doesn't mean that anything, because tomorrow something can change. But pay a lot of attention to the secular trends that are going on and how relevant you are to those secular shifts that are occurring. And I think right now, if you look at it, we happen to be at a 25-year high in stock price or near it. But that's not what I get more excited about. I get more excited about the fact that that actually is probably going to be a 25-year low when you look at the next 25 years where we are. And that's exciting to see that there's so much upside to be had, and that we are just getting warmed up. We're just getting started.
Yeah, you're right. And with your leadership, Jeetu, and the kind of thing that you have been doing, so that is not very far.
It's the thing is leaders get disproportionate amount of credit, but I think the team is working round the clock and really hard. And the only thing I tell the team is keep your head down, stay humble, keep innovating. You just need to be 1.27% better every day. That makes you 100x better in a year. So all we have to focus on is just get 1.27% better today than you were yesterday, and compete with yourself rather than competing with someone else.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. That's a great way of putting it together. Right. The next one I have for you, if you could give one piece of advice to young entrepreneurs interested in AI and networking, what would it be?
One piece of advice is get started and start experimenting right away, and don't believe that you're not a person who needs to know AI, because you will then, in that case, be very irrelevant in the future. You have to make sure that whatever you're doing, you incorporate. You have to be an AI native person. Imagine today if someone didn't know how to use a browser, right?
Yeah.
It would be absurd.
Yeah.
It's going to be just like that.
Yeah.
But faster.
Yeah, but faster. Yes. Yeah, that's how fundamental this is. So people who are listening in, please pay attention to what Jeetu just said. You have to be with AI.
You have to lead with AI, and you have to make sure that you have that become a native part of your core being, because you cannot think about this as something that's separate. Think about this as you now have a companion, you now have a partner in everything that you do to make you better. And think about AI as your booster rather than AI as your threat.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. And then the last one that they have, what is the most exciting project that you're currently working on at Cisco? Of course, something that you can publicly share.
I think one is very hard to do, but AI Canvas is a fantastic one, which actually takes a lot of the AI capabilities across all of our products and makes our products AI enabled in a very different way. Like, we can troubleshoot in a different way. We can think about setting policy in a different way. The way that infrastructure gets managed gets massively simplified. So I think that's one. AI Canvas. I feel like the new products that we have built in security that make the world safer. There's a lot of mission and purpose to that. I do feel like it's only fair to also say, what is the hard part? These are all the exciting projects. The challenge that we're having right now, Arun, is we've built all of this amazing technology, but we have not figured out a way yet to communicate that to customers fast enough and frequently enough where the customers understand that we are a completely different company than we used to be even 2 to 3 years ago. That's a challenge, because at our scale, 965,000 customers across the world in over 100 countries, it's hard to get that machine to work where everyone has uniformity of what's happening on a weekly basis. And we haven't cracked the code yet on that, but that's the challenging part. The exciting part is the pace of innovation is faster today than it used to be, than it was in the past decade combined. So if I look at what we've done in the past 18 months, it's greater innovation than we have done in the previous decade combined. But our customers don't always know about it because we haven't really figured out a scaled mechanism of getting that message syndicated. So you can help.
And Jeetu, yeah, that's what. Yeah, hopefully, a podcast of this kind, AI with Arun show actually helps with communicating that message all through to all your customers. And I do want to highlight. So while the last question, Jeetu, I do want to highlight that this recording that we're doing is actually on Cisco Webex, which is a Cisco product and one of Jeetu's babies. So
yeah, and just so everyone knows, we tried this out on a competitive product. There was really bad audio quality. We came over here. There was literally no issue. And that's because we've actually used a lot of kind of sophisticated technology of AI to make our codecs audio and video more efficient. so that even if you do have packet loss in the network, we are able to compensate for it, which is why this is working as well as it is. And so really proud of the team and what they've done.
Yep. And Jeetu, even without saying it, we have, or you have just articulated the power of AI behind the tool that we're using in this podcast. So thank you very much, Jeetu.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jeetu.
Take care.
Bye then.